Welcome to the Real CP Show. I'm your host, CP. And today's topic: the U.S. providing Tunisian families millions of reparations assistance. Again, today's topic: U.S. providing Tunisian families millions of reparations assistance. How quite interesting or quite non interesting? Quite surprising? Not quite surprising. That say, for instance, if you ask numbers of personnel within the predominant culture, hey, have you or do you have anything to do with economic depravity on things going on in Tunisia? Do you have anything to do with certain types of social upheaval in Tunisia? And how many numbers of personnel within the predominant culture would be like, I ain't got anything to do with nothing over there. But at the same time, U.S. providing Tunisian families millions of reparations assistance, and it'd be very quiet from numbers of personnel within various parts of Badan-based culture. But if you sit there and say something about what about reparations for the American blacks that have been the most disdained, the most hated, the most oppressed, the most racially discriminated, the most racially destructed type of culture ever for generations within the country. Do you think they should get some type of reparations for those type of black pain? And you hear numbers of personnel within the predominant culture saying, I have nothing to do with that. But again, U.S. providing Tunisian families millions of reparations assistance. And unfortunately, millions of American blacks still have no clue what's heading their direction. Have no clue what is heading toward their destruction. Yes, the American blacks overall only have half a generation to one generation left before the overall complete destruction of the American black culture. And that includes demographically, overall. See, supremacists knows this because they are the most brilliant mental manipulation force that has ever existed. Because this is what they do every day. Just as numbers of personnel within the predominant culture, just as numbers of personnel within various parts of other cultures that are allowed to fly under people of color and minority banner, and supremacists just throws in the American blacks into that generic based nonsensical categories of people of color and minority. And this is what supremacists and others are doing, because this is how simple it is to fool millions of American blacks that supremacists knows themselves. This is what they do. See, supremacists is brilliant. They know the games. They invented the different kind of disgusting mental trickery based games, but it's still brilliant in the way they play them against millions of American blacks overall, with few exceptions. With few exceptions. Because the way they look at the American black man and woman, but especially the American black man, this is how they look at him as buffoonery, non-constructiveness, always hop hipping and hop half and laughing and copper chopping and hopper peeping and all that kind of stuff like that, always showing his teeth. This is what they think about the American black man overall. And then they continue with having numbers of American black women sitting there, the ones I know, the one I'm talking, the ones who know they are sitting there strifing with American black men. And there are quite a number of American black women that don't even realize that they're being used with the feminism supremacy demonicness. And numbers of them don't even realize that their destruction is also tied to the American black man's destruction. But that's another different topic. But again, supremacists does this when they sit there and look upon the numbers of black American black men and black women. They look upon them as this. I mean, think about that. Because millions by the US is going toward the Tunisian families way across the Atlantic Ocean. Way across the Atlantic Ocean. Give me a second here. So this is a map. And you see well on the left, upper left corner, you see the United States. You see the southern part, you see Southern America, South America, right? And so you see obviously on the right side, you see the continent of Africa. And that you see on the mid on the right side where scan is going over, but you see right in that midway point to the right, you see Tunisia right below Italy. And for many people, numbers of personnel within, numbers of personnel within American black culture, if you ask where's Tunisia, numbers of them will say probably like where's Tunisia, because you heard too much about that. And if you certainly ask numbers of American black youth about Tunisia on the map, they surely be like, what, Tunisia? Well, but that's a whole different topic in itself. So you see already way across the Atlantic Ocean how supremacists is going to find resources to give to many types of personnel within Tunisia's families, right? Millions, right? Millions, right? Let me show you kind of a symbolicness of it. But before I do that, see, when you relay over informational based truth, see, it's not to convince or for myself. I'm not going to get into an argument, not even a piece of sense. I have not even a piece. I have no patience for ignorance. It's like there's a biblical scripture in Proverbs that talks about how do not speak into the ears of a fool, for they will despise the knowledge. I will refuse to sit there and argue down with ignorance and gullibility. I will refuse to do that. See, supremacists already know that there are millions of American blacks that have a lot of gullibility issues, right? And unfortunately, that's caused by generational black pain, right? And even when, I certainly will not argue with no other person that within the Padambe's culture, because again, there's no such thing as equality among obviously American blacks and no other person that within the Padambe's culture. There's never been equality and never will be, right? Never will be. And supremacists know this, and there are certain personnel within the Padambe's culture who know this as well. Who knows this all as well. But again, when you try to relay over the information of reality, this is what certain numbers of personnel within the Padambe's culture do. And this also is what certain type of gullibilityness and certain type of naiveness numbers of American black uh, personnel will do.
Sorry, Kevin Bacon wasn't in Footloose. What? Of course he was. No, he wasn't. You lose. Of course he was. He was the star. Nope, you're wrong. Look it up. I don't have to look it up. It's common knowledge. He was on the cover of People magazine when the movie. Everyone knows Kevin Bacon was a star of Footloose. It was a huge movie. He was the lead.
Right? I mean, I know it's kind of hilarious, but it's not. And see, that's where again, I have to keep saying this. The American blacks overall only have half a generation to one generation left before the overall complete destruction of the American black culture. And supremacists know this because there's too many internal problems and too much black pain. So unfortunately, supremacists knows what's coming soon, even more, should I say, toward the American black culture overall. And he's irrelevant about deniability among millions of American blacks that refuse to see what the reality is coming toward the American blacks. Unfortunately, black pain is real. And again, supremacists love the gullibility and the deniability within certain parts of the American black culture. Right now, for myself, I'm like this. When I sit there, and well, first of all, I'm not going to listen to gullibilityness. I'm not going to listen to deflectionary tactics. I'm like this when I see that stuff, not a mile away. I see that thing, I see that stuff 100,000 light years away. Not only do I see through that stuff, I observe right through it and around it. And when I sit there and observe that stuff coming my direction, and that person's mouth to open up with nonsensical rhetoric, I'm like this. Because I'm not listening to demonicnism, satanic type of deflectionary tactics. And I'm certainly not going to listen to black pain deflectionary tactics, right? Because again, like in this topic, the U.S. is providing Tunisian families millions of reparations assistance, right? Like this picture is a very interesting picture. It's kind of a symbolism of caricature in this. You see already kind of has this particular woman. She kind of looks a little bit downtrodden, right? And you see already that this big old bag of monetary resources that is given to her. I'm just saying relating to this particular topic of Tunisian families, right? Because just like anything else, supremacists are very good. They'll show a woman and some children in a very downtrodden way and kind of, say don't show too many male situations. Don't show too much of that, right? This kind of show a lot more of the women and stuff like that and the children because that pulls on the heartstrings of many kind of people because these supremacist people are brilliant. That's why they say that's why they are undefeated and they are the most masterful of brilliant manipulation personnel that's ever existed. Let me read you something from a book called Propaganda. On the first few sentences, I'm going to read you something while I continue to keep this particular picture up a little bit, right? In a book called Propaganda that was written about 4 generations ago, almost, which is about 100 years ago, right? And supremacists is brilliant because they know this is true then and it's true now. But unfortunately, millions of American blacks still have no clue about the mental manipulation tactics that are still being played upon them. And unfortunately, there is no more extra time that's been allowed for numbers of them to catch on to the disgusting, the satanic mental manipulation tactic. That's why I say again that the American blacks, unfortunately, overall have half a generation to one generation left before the overall complete destruction of the culture overall, especially demographically. But in the book called Propaganda, that was written almost 100 years ago, under chapter one, under organizing chaos, a couple of few sentences: the conscience and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in a democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country. We are governed, our minds are molded, our tastes formed, our ideals suggested largely by men and women we have never heard of. That's very powerful. And again, relating to this particular topic about the U.S. providing Tunisian families millions of reparations, millions of reparations uh, assistance to Tunisian families way across the Atlantic Ocean. As I showed the map earlier on that right, way across Tunisia, right? And you have people feeling sympathy, and yes, we gotta help. Just like this, is not the show for that. I've already done a couple of shows on that before, talking about the Ukraine situation. How many billions of economic resources and boom boom equipment is going to the Ukrainian person or Ukrainian certain type of personnel, should I say, right? But how many same time, how many numbers of Ukrainian personnel are still leaving Ukraine to come over to the United States and other different parts of the globe, right? Where are those reparations going for the people, for the Ukrainian personnel who are leaving Ukraine and coming to the United States and other different places, right? That's a different, whole different topic in itself. But billions of economic reparations and boom boom equipment is still continually heading toward Ukraine. It's amazing how supremacists finds that the economic resources, the monetary resources, the boom boom resources, right, uh, to send to Ukraine, but at the same time for American blacks, when they say, "What about reparations for American blacks for generations of black pain?" The most disdained culture in the country, the most racially hated culture in the country, the most educational deprived overall personnel within the country, right? They have to keep fighting, fighting, fighting for things in this country. The most poverty stricken personnel in this country, right? The most racially discriminated culture in this country, right? For generations, the most segregated personnel within the country, the most lynched personnel within the country, the most uh, satanic laws that have ever been put upon the people politically have been put against the American blacks for generations. Broken up families, the most broken up families that has ever existed in this country has been done to the American blacks, no one else of no comparison. But at the same time, you can't find no reparations. Do you see how that sounds? But at the same time, in this topic, they can find resources of millions that's going over to number of Tunisian families. You see this game on that? But at the same time, when again, numbers of American blacks ask for reparations. Let me repeat this again. When numbers of American blacks ask for reparations, this is what supremacist personnel do. This is what numbers of personnel within the Panama-based culture do, and even some sellouts. Unfortunately, among the American blacks, this is what they do. But they only take their lead from personnel within the numbers of personnel within the Panama-based culture, who also then takes their lead from true supremacy. But this is what they do with American blacks. They say, "Hey, what about reparations for American blacks?" This is what they do. We don't have any resources. I mean, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. Hey man, pull your own mass up. Put your own mass up like on a sailboat. Put your own mass up a little bit. You should have had an engine in there. Should have had a trolling motor in there. You should have been prepared. You see the discussionality, right? You see the game here. This is what supremacists do. This is what numbers of personnel within the predominant culture. This is what numbers of personnel in various type political arenas do. Hey, we can't find our resources. I mean, well, I mean, we shouldn't be talking about reparations right now. We don't want to uh, uh, separate, separate people and stuff like that. We need to be talking about togetherness. But at the same time, again, millions from the U.S. is going to Tunisian families for reparations assistance, right? Let me sit there and show you something here for a second as well. This is something that didn't happen too long ago. It was talking about reparations as well. Uh,
Institutions have begun to grapple with the idea. As of August 12th, 142 Congress members have co-sponsored H.R. 40, the bill that establishes a commission to study reparations. That is compared to only two in 2014. Even Joe Biden has said he supports the bill. But a real program could be costly.
This hardly seems the time to burden the economy with more debt and more taxes. Essentially, what you want to do is stimulate economic growth for all our benefit.
This is not small money. This is $1 trillion that we're talking about, more or less. Separate social program for this entity that you've carved out that you've called black people. I'm against that.
See that? How they sit there and use an American black phony buffoonery type person, right? And you see the personnel before that. Hey, hey, hey! All excuses in the world, but look at this topic, right? The U.S. is providing millions to Tunisian families for reparation assistance, and those same type of people will be very quiet on stuff like this, right? Right? As you see on the screen, where they talk about numbers of Asian personnel, where they talking about numbers of Hispanic personnel, right here, where they talking about numbers of what we call Native American personnel, where they talking about numbers of what we call immigrants, where they talking about numbers of what we call whatever I just said. It's just ridiculous, right? Because there are good numbers of Hispanics, good numbers of Asians, good numbers of Native Americans, what we call Native Americans, good numbers of immigrant personnel. Just as also there are bad ones, just as there are also numbers of Asian personnel that can't stand other Asian personnel, just as there are other numbers of Hispanics that can't stand other Hispanic personnel. This is as there are numbers of Native, what we call Native Americans that can't stand other Native Americans, just as um, the numbers of immigrants that can't stand other immigrants. But again, that's a shh, right? But again, millions by the U.S. is going toward the Tunisian families for reparation assistance. And how many number of Asian personnel have gotten reparations in some form? How many numbers of Hispanic personnel in some way got reparations? How many numbers of immigrants have gotten numbers of reparations in some kind of way? How many numbers of certainly numbers of what we call Native Americans uh, uh, certainly still get reparations? But American blacks can't get no reparations, huh? You see this disgusting game, right? Because this is what supremacists is doing. Because they're like, wow, we really didn't know that it's gonna continuously to be this easy to fool millions of those American black niglos and niglettes. It's ridiculous. Now, again, for myself, when I sit there and I observe the demonicness and the satanic type of deflectionary tactics, I'm like this. because I'm not listening. I don't have the patience for that type of ignorance. I'm going to show you something else for a second because I'm almost about to close out this show. When they can't find nobody, political personnel overall can't find no assistance for American blacks, right? That includes unfortunate numbers of sellouts, political personnel as well. As you sit there and see right here on the screen, it says, what's this? Standing proudly with whatever these personnel groups and whatever groups, I announced the person this morning at that time 1.25 million immigration relief fund benefiting this district and the neighbors. You see that? Let me. I'm going to show that again. Remember, you can't find no reparations for. Can't find a reparation for the American blacks, right? But at the same time, it's amazing how other people can find reparations to help other people out. That's especially not even legal, or not say necessary citizens, but at the same time find ways of helping everybody else out first, right? Isn't that quite interesting on that? But I'm gonna play that again. Give me one moment. I want to find out again. See that again? Standing proudly with whatever this groups or whatever it is. This person announced this morning at that particular time a 1.25 million immigration relief fund benefiting whatever that particular district. But personnel can't seem to sit there and find reparations for the American black. Do you see the nonsensical part of this? But again, millions by the U.S. to the Tunisian families of for reparations assistance. Well, I'm gonna keep this picture up while reading in general what this amount is in general. Talks about how the U.S. that they're announcing 60 million, 60 million for assistance to support the vulnerable Tunisian families. Let me repeat this again. Talked about how the U.S. Uh, is basically providing 60 million in assistance to support like vulnerable Tunisian families. But it can't seem to find a few $1 million, 10 million, 15, 20 million, 50 million, something for the American blacks, for black pain for generations. Can't find no reparations for that, but they can sit there and find multi-millions of dollars for Tunisian families, just like they keep finding money for Afghanistani families, just like they can keep finding money and resources and equipment for Syrians, just like they keep finding, obviously, billions of economic relief and boom boom equipment for the Ukrainian personnel, but they can't seem to find reparations, right? Monetary assistance for the American blacks. Boy, this stuff is so ridiculous. But to continue with this particular reading, it talks about how it says about the U.S. continues to stand with the Tunisian people as they grapple with an ongoing economic crisis at home and confront food insecurity exacerbated by Russia's aggression in Ukraine. Let me put that again. It talks about how the U.S. continues to stand with the Tunisian people as they grapple with an ongoing economic crisis at home and confront food insecurity exacerbated by the Russians' aggression in Ukraine. It talks about how the U.S. is going to basically give reparations of 60 million in new funding. Hear that word? New funding, 60 million, which will provide rapid assistance to the most vulnerable Tunisians amidst the broad array of economic shocks they face. Specifically, the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, will provide 60 million grant to UNICEF to deliver direct support to vulnerable families throughout Tunisia. But at the same time, people can't seem to find political figures. That also includes various types of black political figures that ain't doing nothing for the American black personnel. Oh, but they got to do for all people, right? So at the same time, how many of them voted for continuous funding to Ukrainian personnel in Ukraine, even though how numbers of them have left Ukraine? How many numbers of black political personnel have sit there and voted to continue to give Afghan families reparations? How many numbers of black political personnel have voted to give Syrian families and personnel economic and whatever else uh, reparations, right? How many number of black political personnel also continues to approve of reparations for what we call Native Americans? How many numbers of black political personnel continue to sit there and give some type or approve of aid for immigrants? How many number of black political personnel show sympathy and whatever reparations given to numbers of personnel within our alternative lifestyle category? But at the same time, when numbers of American blacks say, wait, what about reparations for the American blacks for generational black pain? This is what people do. This is what personnel within the predominant culture do consistently. This is what supremacists do because they control all these different things. This is what they sit there and dictate down to the numbers of personnel within the predominant culture. Right? Tell them you have nothing. We can't give anything. We don't have anything to give. Do you see this disgusting game that continues to be played? This is a disgusting game that continues to be played left and right. Even though the American blacks have been the most historical powerhouse. There is no other cultures, ethnicities, term lifestyle categories, immigrant groups, what we call Native Americans, whatever. There is nobody that compares to the American black culture of before, with few exceptions still now. The American blacks have been the most person who has created and developed the most inventions. Name another culture, cultures, backgrounds, ethnicities, alternative lifestyle categories, etc. Name them. Who has created more inventions than American blacks, besides certain ones within the predominant culture, and how many of them stole and copied inventions over time for the American black man and some American black women? So, but regardless, what other cultures, ethnicities, backgrounds, immigration status, alternative lifestyle categories, you name it, that has have created more inventions than American black. There is no comparison. What other cultures who've had more lynchings than American blacks? What other cultures have served with distinction in the service more than American blacks, besides certain numbers of personnel within the predominant culture? Right? What other culture again? But they're gonna sit there and try to keep calling American black folks lazy. And again, I'm not talking about the sellouts or the gullibility ones, because they like to put in general American blacks in the category in general, right? But what I just said, just that little bit of 20 seconds, there's no other cultures that can compare to the American blacks within the country. And to go through all that black pain of breaking up families left and right today, even today, what is the one of the number one cultures that are exonerated from being removed from their families and put in facilities? Who are the number one person overall, especially disproportionate, that have been exonerated? The American black. What is the number one culture out there? Number one culture out there, and you can put numbers of personnel within the predominant culture. Name another culture out there who, by statistics, have the number one most racial hatredness toward their people. Name them. And you certainly by now say the numbers of personnel with the predominant culture, I'm going to say you're lying. Surely don't say numbers of Spanish, because I'm sure don't say you're lying. Surely don't say what we call Native Americans. I'm going to surely call you a liar. Don't say immigrant. I won't even say that. Don't even waste your time saying that. Numbers of Hispanic personnel, like I said, what numbers of Asian personnel? I don't think so. The number one culture in America who has the number one most racial hatred toward them is the American black. But at the same time, they can't seem the system can't seem to find no reparations for that. But at the same darn time, they can sit there and pass that law specifically for anti-Asian. You see the game of that, right? But but let me go ahead and finish this up little bit on that because I want you to show something on this, and I want you to just imagine what other cultures. Just it's funny, but it's not funny at all. I want you to show me what other man, especially man, uh, uh, would go through this from another culture or cultures, or turn to.
I used to worry about the store owner would follow me around. How the robots is following me around now? Ridiculous. This is ridiculous. See him? I'm in the aisle doing my thing, and this mother robot is following me around like robots harassing me. Ridiculous. Every aisle I go down, this mother right here. You see what I'm saying? He's following me. This is crazy. Is it gonna? It's following me. Caution hazard detect. This is ridiculous. This is profiling.
A darn racial robot with hatred, profiling the American black man. What other culture of man has to go through this kind of stuff? But again, the American black culture only has half a generation to one generation left for the overall complete destruction of the American black culture. Because they know there are millions in a type of system of fog in their mindset. And they want to keep them in this type of fog in their mindset and keep fooling numbers of them and mesmerizing them. And mesmerizing them. Yes, just take a look at this. Because this is what they do to American blacks by the millions daily, is mesmerizing their mindset. Yes. You want to see that again? This is what they do to American blacks' mindset every day. Mesmerize them. With very few exceptions. Yes. Yes. So I hope this was an interesting show because I want to put this as a timepiece purpose. So again and again, when another culture or cultures, etc., gets more economic, uh, monetary resources, reparations, etc., then again, this is for me as a timepiece purpose where I can be like, this is not nothing new again. They continue, the system keeps continuing to sit there and giving reparations to different other people, while at the same time, American blacks sit there. Some American blacks say, what about American blacks getting reparations? And at the same time, this is what numbers of personnel within the predominant culture and supremacists do. And unfortunately, even some sellouts among the American blacks. This is what happens right here. People say, can't find nothing. We don't have anything right now. You see this game on that? It's a disgusting game, but it's brilliant, right? But at the same time, in this particular topic, the U.S. can find reparations for Tunisian families way across the Atlantic Ocean, but supremacists can find reparations to give numbers of Tunisian families. And how many personnel from Tunisia can arrive in America? How many numbers of personnel from Syria? How many numbers of personnel from Afghanistan? How many personnel from Iraq that are within certain parts of the country of America are considered people of color? and minority. And numbers of American blacks still haven't figured that game out yet, allowing people to call them people of color and communities of color, right? And minorities. But at the same time, things like this show me where this talks about numbers of those other cultures I'm talking about, or numbers of Asian personnel, or numbers of Hispanic personnel, or numbers of immigrant personnel, et cetera, et cetera. This says warning: mauling, draying, trucking, and delivery wagons not allowed in this park and are prohibited by city ordinance. Ben Campbell Mayor, Negroes keep out. See that? Said Negroes keep out. Let me show that again. Negroes keep out. This is what supremacists is doing. Let me show this again. Warning: mauling, draying, trucking, and delivery wagons are not allowed in this park and are prohibited by city ordinance. Ben Campbell Mayor, Negroes keep out. But at the same time, when American blacks say, hey man, for this generational black pain destruction, right, of no other culture comparison, what about reparations for the American blacks? Well, uh, uh, well, and look at this quick picture of certain parts of Tunisia. This is just a quick picture of a certain part of Tunisia, right? I think it's in Tunis, Tunisia. I think it is some to that comparable. Does it look like it's dilapidated? Even though Tunisia's beautiful place, historical, and everything like that, it's not about that. It's about the game playing, right? Acting like numbers of Tunisian personnel are dilapidated and just traumatic and economic depravity. I mean, I'm just giving an example, but you see this particular part here. This is part of Tunisia as well, right? But again, when American blacks is like, hey, you know what? What about reparations for the American blacks? Because again, here we go again, U.S. providing Tunisia families millions of reparation assistance. But I'm gonna show you an image, and I'm gonna finish up this show. This is how they look at also American blacks too, who they say, oh, they got their hand out again as usual. This is what they would like to do to American blacks as well. Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second here. Yes. See, this is what they wish they can do to American blacks. Just get them out the way. But they already know again, in half a generation to one generation left, the destruction of the American blacks will happen overall. Because unfortunately, millions of American blacks still have no clue. The heading continuous destruction. The finishing move that is going to happen to the American blacks in less than one generation. While the system and none of the personnel within Padamese culture and none of the other personnel from different other cultures and backgrounds, etc., who know they are the ones within certain parts of those cultures who want to be numbers of honorary personnel within the Padamese culture, which is a different topic, who are going to do the bidding or do the bidding of personnel within certain parts of Padamese culture to do the bidding, and that is to assist in oppressiveness toward the American black. And then what none of the American blacks do, as far as from the gullibility and naive standpoint of nothing newness, some of them will be like, but I have some friends. I'll have some friends and confuse. There are some friends of this culture, that culture, with the collectiveness. Right now, this is not to show different examples of those other different lovable cultures showing black pain additionally and hatred of the American black, right? But again, in closing up the show, when I sit there and hear nonsensical rhetoric, I'm like this. So I thank you for tuning in to the Real CP show. I hope this was a interesting show in itself. Again, thank you for tuning in to the Real CP show.